Lonesome report, take two. I'm Jim Mundorf, and I was saying I was going to come up with something snappy. I'm from the mid waters of Keg Creek in Pottawatomie County, Iowa.
That's
How's
pretty
that?
good. That's
I'm
pretty
not
good.
the headwaters, but
Those
I
are
do have
good.
Keg Creek is like a half mile from me, Pottawatomie County.
Yeah, but those are good words. Keg Creek and Pottawatomie County. That's
Yeah,
cool.
I think there's Pottawatomie in it. There's a bunch of I think the reservations in Kansas.
That's an Indian.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think there's a Pottawatomie reservation in Kansas that I have to drive through sometimes.
Well, Archer County is rich in uh, Comanche and
Oh, I'm sure.
all of this stuff. But Archer County is the home of Larry McMurtry, Archer City, who wrote Lonesome Dove and all those other cool movies.
Brokeback Mountain.
I know. I'm not admitting to that.
He ruined it all, didn't he? Okay, back to the intro. Shad Sullivan from the headwaters of Bitter Creek in Archer County, Texas. Did every
That's right.
Texan know where all the counties are? Like, if you tell somebody that you're from Archer County, they know where you're from.
No, I would say not because Texas has more counties than any state in the union. I think there's 256 counties and they seem
Good
big, but
grief.
they're not that big. I mean, like Archer County is a quarter of the size of my county in Colorado, and my county in Colorado is the smallest county in the state. So I don't think
Potawatomi's the biggest in the state, I
is
think.
it?
Yeah, yeah. We
I
got
don't
two county fairs. We got an East
what?
County Fair and a West County Fair.
And then do you have a final county fair?
And it's a state fair.
No.
I mean, it's the
Yeah,
final county fair for every county, I
yeah,
guess.
I get it.
Best state fair in our state. Texas State Fair is probably going on.
It is right now. That's right. Sure
You ever
is.
go up there?
Never been there. My wife has been there a few times, but I've never been to the State Fair of Texas. And last year she was there and they had a shooting at the fair at the State
Where
Fair
is
of
it?
Texas. I think it's in Dallas or Fort Worth. It's between Dallas and Fort Worth at the uh State Fair of Texas grounds.
Oh,
It's in the big city, great big city.
yeah. Hmm. All right. McDonald's is so I said at one of these deals, we should talk about the news that nobody else is talking about.
Right.
And this is the new, and we're in the middle of a presidential election. We got this hurricane bearing down on us, worst thing in the ever. But I feel like the biggest news in agriculture, probably in the whole year, happened yesterday, and very few people are talking about it. You have McDonald's, who is, I looked up right before this, the largest buyer of beef and pork in the world, and they are suing the four largest beef packers and probably pork packers. I know a couple of them are pork packers too, um, for collusion and price fixing,
Yep.
and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, and I noticed that that lawsuit has a lot of very, very, very familiar phrases and words and
Yes.
writing that some other lawsuits have on it. But you're right; people aren't talking about it. I did not know that McDonald's was the largest buyer of pork. That really surprises me, and I don't know why. I guess what do they have? The McRib sandwich? I don't know.
That's
Uh,
true. I never even thought of that. But yeah, I looked it up and it's from the SEC on sec.gov. So on the SEC website, it says they're the largest buyer of beef and pork in the world. Maybe they have more in like foreign countries because they got a lot of McDonald's.
yeah, that could be. I'm having a hard time. I don't know rectifying this. I guess because McDonald's is not. I'd say they're complicit.
Yeah, that's what's interesting is I mean, when you think about how big these corporations are and like how that relationship has to work. Like, did you know, like Tyson Foods? So the people they're suing, Tyson Foods, JBS, Cargill, National Beef. Those are the four largest beef packers in the U.S. They control. In the lawsuit, it said 80%, but a lot of times you'll hear 85% of
Right.
all beef produced in the U.S. And when those four, corporations can work together, they can control prices. And that's what the lawsuit says. And yeah, so to go back to your question, did you know Tyson Foods invented the chicken nugget?
No,
Yeah.
never.
It's
I've never had a chicken nugget.
You've never had a chicken nugget
No,
in your life? You've never ate a chicken nugget?
no, but my son says it's the best. It's the best thing at McDonald's.
It probably is. I don't blame him there.
Ugh.
Their chicken nuggets are kind of good, but I can't. You've never ate a chicken nugget?
I've had chicken strips, but not from McDonald's.
That's weird. Does your wife cook chicken nuggets for your kid?
My wife doesn't cook anything. I cook,
Oh my
and
God.
we do not. No,
Don't
we do
say that because now my wife's gonna be like,
not.
Shad said.
Well, we do not. We do not eat chicken at home. I mean, we only eat beef. We have access to lots of beef and all of our own USA raised beef off of our ranch.
Yeah.
So
A
we
lot
don't, I
different than
don't,
what's at McDonald's, right?
yeah, I don't buy chicken. I don't buy chicken, but sorry, I didn't mean to get you off. Yes, this lawsuit's a big deal. And
Yeah. But yeah, so what I was talking about is the relationship there has got to be, you know, they're they've got it's crazy that now they're suing each other. But yeah, Tyson
I know
Foods invented the chicken nugget.
you
And
have to,
and that's what, McDonald's has. I mean, that's how far it all goes back, and it just kind of gives an example to how deep this whole thing is. And what's crazy to me too, and so what you alluded to get really into it, RCAF, which is Cattlemen's Group that Shad has been a big part of, they sued. They started the first lawsuit, I think, against the poor beef packers for this collusion and price fixing. Do you know what year that was? It's probably
2000, April of 2019, we filed it and it's in
really.
discovery.
I thought it was
Yeah.
older than that.
No, it's in discovery phase right now. And yeah, there's been a whole lot of people join in on that lawsuit, including McDonald's, because I noticed that it's filed in the same state.
Yeah.
But I want to say that, excuse me, I want to say that as you talk about these people and how deep this is and how they were, I feel like McDonald's has done less for the health of the American public than anybody. And I feel like that they are complicit in this. You have to remember that McDonald's, Tyson, JBS, and Cargill all sat on the board of the Global Roundtable, or were members of and sat on the board of the Global Roundtable for Sustainable Beef. They were all partners. They're all big buddies. So I'm a little bit confused on what's happened here. Has there been a turn in the relationship? Is McDonald's financially going backwards? What is the catalyst of this? I'm very anxious to see how this plays
Yeah,
out.
I saw you put that, but I think when you get down to it, Tyson Foods or McDonald's or these big corporate people, if you ask the CEO what the Global Roundtable Sustainable Beef is, they probably couldn't even tell you. I think that's a focus you have because you focus. I mean, it's an issue
Oh,
that we
they
deal with a lot. But as far as McDonald's corporate leadership and really how things run, they don't give two
I don't
oops.
know about that, Jim. When you get on the website, you'll see that the sustainable lead is right there, right at the top. Yeah, there's
Yeah.
sustainable lead. That's what they call it. They call the manager or the sustainable officer the lead, LEAD. And I don't know. It's
Well, I
just
think when it comes down to what they care about is if they're getting screwed or not. And what they did, so to go back into it, RCAF laid this whole thing out in their lawsuit. And I have an article. Maybe I'll put a link to that up. When I went through, I pretty much read the lawsuit, and I spent days on it, and I wrote
yeah.
this whole thing out. And but anyway, and so RCAF filed their lawsuit, and then there's a wholesale group of they're not grocery stores, but they're like the middlemen. They're a
Yeah,
wholesale buyers and they sell to grocery stores. And they saw that lawsuit and they jumped in on that deal too. And their lawsuit is pretty much like a carbon copy. Like they pretty much cut and pasted our calf's lawsuit into theirs. And I don't know how the lawyer world works, but apparently you can just do that. And so you have cattle producers and now you have buyers. You know, you have the suppliers and you have the purchasers of the beef packers, which they, if we go back to our ESG work, it's upstream and downstream. They're screwing people upstream and downstream of their product. And then now you have the largest beef buyer in the world who saw those lawsuits and came in, and they did use a lot of the same stuff from the lawsuit. And I've just kind of glanced through it so far. But my goal is I would really like to go through the whole thing and then put out a podcast. I think maybe just a solo podcast of me breaking the whole thing down because, like I said, it's the biggest news in the cattle industry, beef industry that we've had. I mean,
yeah,
this
and the
lawsuit, and I've
loss.
always thought that from the time RCAP did it, because what it includes is there's a person in one of these beef packing plants who said he was told when the cattle prices get high, we um we stop
They
processing
colluded.
cattle. Yeah. So they slow everything down, which then builds up your supply. On the producer side, we have too many cattle because we can't sell them. And then on the seller side, they're not producing as much beef, so then it reduces the amount of beef, increases the demand, and that's how and then so those guys are sitting in the middle and they're paying less for cattle, getting more for meat. And that's
That's
pretty much
right.
what the lawsuits are.
And that this lawsuit lends credence to what Bill Bullard has been pushing out on his graphs for since
It includes the
2019.
graphs.
It includes the graphs, and where you have the price of beef in the store going up, up, up. We're even, and then the price that the producers are getting going down, but the price in the store still going up. And yes, they did get some witnesses. Um, Geez, that's kind of scary because we all know they're a big old cartel.
Well,
To
that's the thing, and that's the other thing with like this lawsuit compared to the other ones. This one is naming, it doesn't name the witness, but it names the people he worked with, like direct people, the people who told him exactly
Well, there
when
was one
prices get.
witness name in it, wasn't there? Not the
No, the
last name.
witness, his name is not in it, but they named the people that he named. So he said he was told by this hooker guy, Mr. Hooker,
Yeah,
that when prices get high, we stop processing
but
cattle.
wasn't
Which
this guy's
that, I
name?
mean, kill that guy and then
Well, wasn't this guy's name Jason F?
see. I don't know. I haven't.
Yeah,
I just skimmed it. The
at
witness,
the
because
very
what
beginning,
I read is they said witness one.
witness one is Jason F.
I hope you're not giving out information. You
You
read
have
that
it
in the
on
lawsuit?
paper. You have it on paper, dude. I
I
read it
don't
in the
have
lawsuit.
anything. Okay, well, see, I didn't read that part. I was,
Yeah.
like I said, didn't you say it's 100 pages?
Yeah, it's 100 pages, and I went through the first 50 last night, and I'm like, my gosh, and I fell asleep, and
Well,
and a
see, you've
lot of
looked
it,
at it closer than I have.
well, a lot of it's redundant, and you
One
get
thing
to,
I thought that was really interesting, you talk about the graphs. There's a graph in there showing um their processing. What does it show? It showed over the years and how they reduced it and how all four of those look exactly the same. And then it shows independent processors, which aren't involved in that deal. And it's the complete opposite.
really,
Like the way that
yeah,
maybe I'll try to put that in here. The way
that's a
that
good graph to put up there.
yeah. But
Yeah,
yeah,
I don't.
it
It's
seems like
scary.
they took the RCAF and all that kind of stuff and they were like, they fine tuned it almost.
No, I agree. I agree with you. And there's a lot of people in the background, independent people involved in these lawsuits that I don't even know who they are. I mean, I've never been told a name or anything like that on these other deals, so I don't know who they are, but I know they're out there, and I'm like, well, I hope they're safe, because
Yeah, and
this
that's one of the things, the other things too, like when RCAF came out with theirs, I think it may have been after the wholesalers came in one of the Packers lawyers came out and said this witness is not credible. And so a Minnesota judge said, "Okay, we're going to find out. We're going to investigate this witness and find out if he's credible." And they went through this big long process and they were like, "Yep, he's credible." And that was so now all that has happened and now McDonald's is in on it, which
So let
is
me ask you this on this lawsuit, what is McDonald's after? Are they after financial
it doesn't
compensation?
I don't think it even says. In the news, so I looked through and then I read the article, a number of different articles kind of about it, which I don't think those people even skim it.
Well,
Like
how
they,
does this,
what's that?
how does this affect our industry and producers? And, is here's the irony of this whole thing I was thinking about yesterday. uh, you know, I'm a proponent of breaking all these monopolies up and these people breaking antitrust laws. And I noticed in this lawsuit they referred to the Sherman Antitrust Act, which is incredible. But um, do the is this could this be a way where they go in from the backside and break these big conglomerates up? I mean, what
I
is
think
the
it,
irony here?
my take, and so I was just up in North Dakota and there was a USDA guy there, Andy Green. Do you know Andy Green?
Yeah, I know Andy Green.
Yeah. And everybody loves Andy Green. What do you think about him?
I don't know him personally.
Brett thinks he's great, but I was like, what are the odds he's going back to DC and laughing about these hillbillies that he visits out here in North Dakota?
Him
Because
and
I
Calico are
talked to
like
him for a
this.
long time. I did a speech. So I talked out there in North Dakota, and I ripped in like usual. I talked about how crooked the USDA is and how they're kind of work for these corporations. And he was front row, just staring at me the whole time. And so afterwards, I went up and made a point of. I went right up to him and talked to
Well,
him
how
about,
did he
and he
treat
is a
you?
good. And USDA is so big. I mean, you talk about these corporations, and
Oh,
USDA is bigger. Like they have so many people and so many departments and so when we say USDA, it's not like we're talking about, I mean, but he is part of, I think, the Packers and Stockyards division.
do you know that there are into the okay, let me say two things. Calicrate and Andy Green are very good friends and work together. Okay,
Oh, okay.
on the opposite side of that, um, there are 274 appointed positions in the USDA for the next presidency. How do they appoint 274? It's a machine.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to say. Because so, like what he said, somebody I think asked him something similar of like, how do we get control of this industry when it's really controlled by these people? And he said, well, they have so many lawyers, as far as these corporations, they're going to sue the federal government if they come down and try to enforce the laws, is pretty much what I feel like he was saying. And I asked, there was another USDA guy. He was at RCAP convention,
Yeah,
but
I
when
can't
he,
remember his name.
but when he was in Nashville when I was down there for US Cattlemen's, and I asked him they had a question and answer, and I asked him, I was like, why? How come these like civil lawsuits or these lawsuits go through and are accusing these Packers of doing this, and then the USDA is just kind of sitting on their hands, just watch. And he's like, "Well, yeah, that's just what." He goes, "There's so much attorneys and legal action that has to happen for all this to happen that it would just cost the federal government so much to come in and do it. So it's easier for them to just sit back and see what happens here and what gets proven here. I mean, and these lawsuits are kind of coming like they produced this witness and they produced all this evidence. And so I think what his point was is once that's over, then they'll come in. But to me, it's like it all kind of depends on what happens with the USDA. Like and who runs it and I feel like that almost goes into what we're going to talk about too is the other big thing in the news is still the hurricane and the relief from the hurricane and the failures of the federal government. And so I feel like what's happened in North Dakota has really just shown that I think a lot of people hear about like when Vivek was running for president, Ramaswamy, and he was talking about how we need to come in with a chainsaw and get rid of these federal government departments. Everybody, you hear about getting rid of the U.S. Department of Education. CIA, FBI, all that stuff. And everybody's like, oh, we can't just do that. We'll be lost. But it's kind of like, well, look at what's happening here.
We're lost anyway.
Yeah, well, in North Dakota, the private citizens are the ones who are taking care of everything. We can still take care of everything. And if you look at the donations coming in, Elon Musk is coming in and doing all this stuff. We've got, some
You're
Hollywood
saying North
people.
Dakota, you mean South Carolina?
North Carolina, that's what I meant.
North Carolina? Yeah. Well, I mean, that is a huge failure. I mean, this isn't nothing new. Everybody always says, I'm from the government and I'm here to help. And then that it's a train wreck. We know that we're sending billions to Ukraine, billions to Israel, all of these other countries. We are taking money and housing all of these immigrants. Common sense tells you, where do we get this money from? How do we find the money to put in the coffers? Somebody's got to suffer. And so immediately those people that were hit by that hurricane in the South, they're suffering, right? There's dead people. They've washed all of their lives away. It's terrible. And nobody's there. I mean, have we seen a report from Kamala Harris or Joe Biden on that yet? Yeah, finally we did yesterday, over a week after it happened. People are complaining about FEMA. People are complaining about all of these agencies except the local agencies. Everybody's lifting their local agencies up. Well, the federal government comes in last night and says on the news, we're spreading misinformation, which, by the way, any one person that uses the word misinformation, I write them off. I write them off immediately because
You cut
misinformation
off, you write them off as what?
immediately. I write
Right.
them off immediately. I don't believe a word they say because misinformation is just a word that all the elites use and all the liberals use, and it's just dumb.
Yeah.
And so, but you're getting these real-time reports of these people, and there is a failure of our government, if not inside of the flood ravaged areas, if not there, for sure on the financial end. We're sending all of our tax paying dollars. And in the middle of this crisis, Harris comes out and says, we're going to send 180 some $1 million to uh,
Lebanon.
Lebanon. And I'm
Yeah.
like,
And,
these
and it,
people don't,
that
are
is
they
it.
disconnected, Jim? Is
I
that
don't
how?
know because somebody came out and said she wants you to know that she hates you. And it's kind of almost like, as far as the American people are concerned, and it's like, yeah, like we've been saying, like they care more about migrants than American citizens. They care more about Ukraine than they do about American military. They care, all this stuff. And then she comes out and does that right in the middle of a hurricane where she's going on some sex podcast to do her campaign, and she's not doing anything for these people that are dying. And it's almost like, how could you thumb your nose anymore
No
at the
joke.
American people?
What did your
Um,
mom and dad always tell you? Actions speak louder than words. Actions speak louder than words, and that is totally where we're at with all of this stuff. And I hope that those local sheriffs understand their constitutional duty, and I think they do, and I think they are. And they're telling them, we're in control here because your local community can do more than the feds ever could.
yeah, and that's what I feel like this is really proven. And you have these people who think we can't operate without the federal government, but like have you seen this Tim Kennedy? The
No,
he's a ex, I think, special forces guy. I'm not super familiar with him, but I've been kind of watching him during this deal. I wish I could remember his Save Our Allies, I believe, is the nonprofit. But so it's this nonprofit, and he went in and probably did 100 times more than FEMA has done here to save people and to work to get people. He kind of coordinated all these helicopter deals and all of that. And so he's done a lot on social media if you watch him, and he's kind of coordinated these there's a Hollywood guy, Chris Pratt. He's an actor, and then like Jocko Willink, he kind of coordinates all these guys to where they can put their money in, help. and actually makes, and what that proves is the private sector is so much stronger
Oh
than the
yeah.
federal government. And then you see the Glenn Beck thing where
Yep.
they're hiding, FEMA has one truck and it's hiding off under a tree, and then somebody's like, yeah, they don't work weekends if you don't, and then they're talking about $750 to these people. It's
That you
so
have to
nuts.
apply for,
Yeah. But
you
this Tim
know?
Kennedy, the way he started is Afghanistan withdrawal, because all these special forces guys had friends in Afghanistan that were Afghan people that had helped them, and then the US just abandoned them. And so what he did is he went in there and like got them out, started saving our allies. That's where it comes from, I believe. And then, like when the thing happened in Israel, I think he went in and helped American citizens who were stuck in Israel, helped them get out because the federal government, he just kind of goes where the federal government should be
Yeah.
helping, and he does the job, and he does it 10 times better than they ever did.
Well, that's the way Glenn Beck is too. I mean, Glenn Beck sent airplanes over to Afghanistan, and
Yeah.
they wouldn't even load them. He sent them to Israel. He's right in the middle of that. I mean, Glenn Beck is very quiet about his contributions. I mean, that these people are, even Elon Musk is going out there and getting his product to the people for nothing so they can communicate. Where in the heck is the federal government?
Well, I
Federal
just think it's
government that
almost good to see. I mean, nobody
it
wants to see
is.
this kind of stuff, but just to prove to people we don't need,
Agreed.
yeah, this federal government hovering over us because they are so inept at doing their job. It's
Well,
such a waste of money.
I
Every
talk.
penny that goes to them.
It's every penny that goes is a waste of. And I say, those people that use the word misinformation, those people are. I just had it in my head, but they are. What do you call it? You just said it. Inept at their jobs. They contribute nothing. Those people are non-contributors, and the all of the working people are the ones that are saving the day. I mean, and this
Yeah.
tragedy is so unspeakable, man.
That that Tim Kennedy said, he said it best. He said, I think he said, one redneck is worth 100 PhDs.
Amen.
And he
And
talked about the guys on four-wheelers with chainsaws and how they can get stuff done. And it was, I mean, it was great. I mean, and that's the truth. You get yourself in a pinch, and who's going to come save you? It's not somebody with a PhD from who's had a tenured or any of that crap. It's going to be
yeah,
guys who know how to run stuff.
yep,
Um,
you're exactly right. They don't know how to do anything.
yeah. And so you talk about misinformation. I keep thinking, well, that's because someone said it about you, like the Ethan Lane, who is the NCBA DC lobbyist.
You said it.
They were talking about disinformation, misinformation on EIDs. And I want to go back to the McDonald's lawsuit, because to explain to people why we're so against electronic identification on all of our cattle, it's because the people in this industry, the beef packers, are so corrupt, and they will do anything they can to get a hand up on this deal, and to get producers under control. And I went into this, so I'm actually trying to get a podcast up today. This is Wednesday morning, by the way, and I'm trying to get a podcast up today where I talked in North Dakota, and this was brought up. So we wanted to talk about the Rally for Freedom in North Dakota. Um,
I thought it
and
was
this,
in South Dakota.
see, I've got North Dakota. I told people I cannot
You have
travel
North
this much.
Dakota on your mind today, buddy.
Well, North Carolina. Then I talked about North Dakota. It all gets mingled in.
And
But anyway, I gave a talk in North Dakota, and I brought up cattle trace.
right.
The NCBA, the beef industry lobbyists, keep saying cattle trace is who needs to control all of our
Hmm.
third-party data.
I wonder why.
The chairman of the board for cattle trace is Mark Gardner. Mark Gardner is also the chairman of the board for U.S. Premium Beef. U.S. Premium Beef, I think it was in 2011 they sold, but up until then, they were the majority owner of National Beef Packing. and they still are an integral partner. I believe there's four shareholders of National Beef, or like four what they call minority shareholders, and U.S. Premium Beef is still one of them. So you could call U.S. Premium Beef a beef packer owner. They own 15% of National Beef
Yeah.
Packing, and that is who they want. The chairman of the board of that company is who they want to be in charge of all of the third party data um, on that gets put on these EID tags eventually. And that was brought up at the Rally for Freedom, and I like to hear that. They didn't go into the details really, but this cattle trace is something that really needs to be looked into. Um,
And there's another one, another organization up in Wichita, and it's a traceability company that is also working hard to get the market share of that. And in fact, all of their board of directors and their advisory board and shareholders, there's a stakeholder and a shareholder, and those people are all employed by or involved in committees at NCBA or employed by NCBA and these other lobbyist organizations pushing for traceability. It's nefarious as hell, and it's my dad would say it's an interesting conflict.
yeah, and then you
And
have their lobbyists out talking about misinformation,
yep,
disinformation because of
yep,
what we're telling people. Like we're fine.
yep,
It's just like what Corbett did for the convention. He found the policy. He told people the policy. They tried to run him ass right out of business.
yep.
Um,
And Ethan also said that we were pushing misinformation to get clicks and make money off of our social media. And I'll just tell you this, Jim, I've never, ever made a dime, not one penny off of anything that I've put on social media. If I knew how, I would, but I don't know how. And I have never,
that's the
nobody,
thing. That's
I
the
mean,
thing with
I'm
Lonesome
doing
Lands.
this pro bono, man.
Yeah, and I'm pretty much am too. I mean, I've made money off of YouTube, but it ain't much. It
Like
ain't
18
much.
bucks.
I mean, I don't know. I was gonna go over it sometime. I'm probably at like 130 bucks for the month, I think, it's something like that.
Wow.
But but if you want to talk about people who do things to make money, like you're being told what, like Ethan Lane, how much, let's compare paychecks. You know what I mean? Let's see who's paying those bills when you control $80 million beef checkoff program and you're up there in DC and your members tell you that they do not want a mandated EID tag, and you're still up there in DC going on radio programs telling everybody you can, all the politicians, that we have to have this EID program. Who's screwing who on that deal?
Exactly. And by the way, in that organization, I think there's like either 14 or 17 people whose paycheck is 100 grand plus. It's a bunch. And I'm like,
Yeah.
and all of that comes from us. All of that comes from us. And it's just, it's another example of how our world is split. Even our industry is split. And
Well,
you know,
information is their biggest, like him coming out. It's you're probably going to hear more and more misinformation stuff because it's their biggest enemy. Like the truth and information
the truth
is
is their
their
enemy.
biggest enemy, and that's
Yeah.
what Harriet Hageman. That's why it's so important. I'm going to put a link to that rally in the description because there's a really good YouTube video. South Dakota Stockgrowers did a great, amazing thing when they put this thing together because Harriet got up there and she just nailed this thing every which way, talking about why they're doing it, how they're doing it, and how it needs to be stopped. And everyone should look at that because it's full of truths, and that's what they don't want to get out there. And we got less than a month to stop this deal.
So what do you think? Will we get it stopped?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, here's the thing that I want people to realize too, because I get it. I hate calling it's almost like nerve-wracking or intimidating to call your representatives. And so, but once you do it, it's like, oh, it's the easiest thing ever. And it takes 30 seconds. I've called them on this deal, and here's what happens. They answer the phone, they say, Randy Feenstra's office. This is the little weasel Randy Feenstra's office. That's my rep. That's my rep. But And then you say, okay, I'm Jim Mundor from, you tell them where you're from, who you are, and that you want your representative to support. I wrote it down somewhere. HJ 167 is Harriet Hagman's amendment that would stop the, and if you're calling a senator, I believe you tell them to support SJ 98. And then so they'll take that down. They say, okay, thank you very much for your input. I think I have one senator that says, well, we want to write you back on this issue. What's your address? Or, something like, you might get something like that, or they might ask you for an email address or something. And then that's it. I mean, then they're like, okay, have a good day. So it seriously takes 30 seconds, call your rep and put your voice behind this thing, and that's what gets these things done. If you ask senators, I can remember I was on a thing with Thomas Massey a long time ago, and he explained it. He was like, phone calls get our attention. They have to be reported to us, and so that's how we got to do it.
I think that people are talking about the LMA, and they're like, oh, they're neutral, but with I think that they are not neutral, and they are not representing their constituents either by not making, well, first of all, their silence at the they weren't even at the rally for freedom, and because of that their silence gives their position away.
Well, they've
And
given their position. I mean,
they,
Jack
yeah,
Payne, and
they're
so we're talking
neutral.
about Livestock Marketing Association, who is the association. We talk about Cattlemen's Association. Livestock Marketing Association is the association for sale barns, pretty
Right,
much.
right.
And it's almost like a farm bureau outfit because they insure them all, and so they make
That's
a
right,
ton
they
of money
bond
off
them.
it. And so, and like Corbett said, he doesn't know one, and Corbett knows all the sale barns, like pretty much
Yeah.
he has, and he, in his speech there at the Rally for Freedom, he said he doesn't know one single sale barn that is for this deal, but they can't get their association to back them up, which at the end, it's like, you got to do
Well, it's the
something
same
different.
way with the American Farm Bureau. I
Farm
mean,
Bureau,
they
what a
pass.
lot of people I think don't realize, they actually have a policy for they
Yes,
have policy to support EID.
yes, but they're local, like the local
Yeah,
Farm Bureau here. They passed policy against it and then took it to the state level, and they shut them down. They won't even let them talk about it.
yeah.
So why do they give their money to these organizations?
Well,
I
that's
don't
the
understand.
thing that I think the big enemy of information with these deals, because it's becoming more and more obvious that because everybody loves their local farm bureau, their county farm bureau,
Yeah.
even state farm bureau here in Iowa. And Nebraska, we know has a great uh, farm bureau leadership. And they actually, when I was looking at about ESG and this kind of stuff, Nebraska came out against it, but then federally, they're kind of the nationally they kind of go along with it. So it's almost like they're this big organization that talks about how many farmers they have. It's kind of like the cattle deal. They have all these members that are small farmers, and this and as but at and they have their county, and then their county voice gets muffled a little bit as it goes to the state, and then when it goes federally, it gets completely shut off.
It's
And I don't think,
exact.
and the county people don't realize that yet. I don't think.
Well, I don't know how they could not realize it, but I'm just telling you, it is the exact same thing on every national organization at that level who has presence in Washington D.C. All of these leaders and policymakers on these national organizations on that high level have no stake in the game. They are totally disconnected from the producer. Totally. They've never, all they are is college graduates that have been indoctrinated through the global corporate system to push that narrative. They have no stake in the game, and it's a problem, man. It's a problem. That's why I say get your money out of these organizations.
Right. Yeah, I
So,
mean it goes back to almost the federal government deal. It's kind of like you give you pay for these big fancy offices in DC, and these people do not support what you're doing.
yep,
And if you look at what has happened, like I keep going back, I think 450,000 small farms have been liquidated in the past 5 years. 107,000 small farms and ranches have went do, don't no longer exist in the past 5 years. And so when you look at those numbers, 5 years, 100,000 as far as cattle goes, farms and ranches, how can you not be like, we're failing? We are a failure. If you're
Exactly.
Farm Bureau, you are a failure over the past 5 years. If your
Exactly.
goal is to protect small farms and ranches, you are a gigantic failure. And when you fail at something, which I have done many times, the only way
You have to
you can
change
really
it.
move forward is you look yourself in the mirror and say, I failed. And how do I fix it? They don't say that. They don't ever say that. They say we're the best and we're here for you and we've got your back and we're doing all this stuff for you.
And why
But
is
at
that?
some point, these meetings have to become, what are we doing? And they talk about all this money coming in from this green energy and all that, but
Well, that's the whole deal. It's
guys
the
are
power
still
money.
yeah, guys are still leaving, and kids are still not coming back, and
Well,
instead
let
of
me this is a great segue right here, if you don't mind. Farmers are still going out of business. Kids are still not coming back. We've lost, you said it a while ago, since 2020, we're losing an average of 17,000 producers a year. Yesterday, the Farm Service Agency, Zach Ducheneau, came out and said, we are going to the tune of $256 million. We are going to save failing ranches and farms that are government guaranteed. So in other words, you have all of these farms, ag producing families that are borrowing money through their local banks, and then the federal government underwrites those loans, and those loans are failing. They are losing those. So they have I can't remember. I read the article. There's thousands and thousands of them across the nation that they are going to save. And when I say save, they are going to completely wipe their debt away with this taxpayer money to the tune of $256 million. They're going to start in the East, obviously, with the Black Farmers Union sued the federal government 40 years ago, and the federal government they won the lawsuit for racial discrimination. This was 40 years ago, and there's never been a president or a Congress that allowed that lawsuit to be finalized. And it finally, under Biden, it got finalized. And these Black Farmers Union, they legitimately won for discrimination, but it was a 40-year-old suit. So this is going to be part of that. And then they're going to sweep across the nation and wipe the debt away for all of these failing producers who have government guaranteed loans. And so I don't know how I feel about that, but it's
I
a
know how
big
I
deal.
feel.
Well, talk to me.
You're just
Talk to
kicking the
me.
can down the road. If you have a
Yeah.
farm that's failing and you come in and you pay off their loans, well, guess what? They got to buy cattle next year and they got to buy seed and they got to buy chemical and they got to do what they can. And if they're a failing operation and they realize that the federal government's just going to keep them going, they're just going to keep failing and the system doesn't get fixed. It's
Well,
just like this.
that's exactly right. You just said it. The system doesn't get fixed. And that's what we have to fix is the system.
And so what
But
you're doing is pissing money away
you're pissing
instead
money
of,
away. But here's the deal. There's always something behind this stuff. Once you take that money and once they save you, you are forever beholden to the federal government. And now they dictate to you how, when, and where you are going to be a producer. And so I think it's very dangerous territory, very, very dangerous territory. And I think we need to be really vigilant on this kind of government guaranteed stuff.
yeah, I don't. You'll have to send that to me because I'm not familiar, but I do know there was a big settlement for racial discrimination in the USDA,
Yep.
and there was a big article in the New York Times, and I was almost surprised it was still up when I wrote something about Cory Booker's plan a couple years ago. But um, when this settlement went through, it came out that if you are African American heritage, you pretty much can apply no matter what, and they will send you a bunch of cash. And there was whole I remember the one part of the article, and this is the New York Times, and they said there was full apartment buildings that would send in their address and apply for this stuff, and they all got paid. And so when it comes to the federal government handing out money, it just becomes such a crap show. You froze on me. Are you there?
You're frozen on me. I'm not
Oh,
frozen, but you're frozen.
I wonder
John
who.
Boyd Jr. John Boyd Jr., he's the founder of the Black Farmers Union. He's the one that really pushed that. And I don't know. There's just such a different cult. There's a cultural divide between those farmers back east and out here out west. And they legitimately won that lawsuit, but they had not been compensated for that lawsuit until this year, and
Yeah,
they need to because they legitimately won that lawsuit. But however, tying yourself to the federal government is a bad idea. Get rid of these guaranteed loans and get it back into the private sector, if you can, because I don't know, Jim, who's going to be the producers here. I mean, we're number one, we're not producing. And when I say producing, we're not producing children. Families are not having kids like they used to have. So automatically, there's less kids going to come back to the farm. It's not profitable. Automatically, we're going to have less kids come back to the farm. Where do those ag kids go that aren't coming back to the farm? They go to college and they get indoctrinated into the corporate system. The corporate system shoots them back out here to tell these original farmers and ranchers producers how they need to be producing. I mean, there's more people telling these lifelong producers how to produce that they're doing it wrong than ever before. And then these people die or they retire, they sell their farms. And what does that do? That goes into the corporate system. It is a travesty all
right.
the
And
way
that
down the
goes
line.
back to the entire system needs fixed instead of just throwing
Yes.
money at it. And nobody loves throwing money at stuff more than this administration. I mean, they're spending, I
Well,
think
any
another
administration.
1.7 trillion came out to go to this climate smart stuff and more of these farms that get put on this system. And that's the other thing about taking this kind of money. That what happens when that money gets shut off, and your operation is set up to taking in federal government money, and if that stops and your operation is completely beholden to it or relying on it, I guess I should say, then what happens to your operation?
Okay, I won't move. I'll just talk.
Okay.
Okay, so there's a fake meat company called Meatable, Meatable, and they are 6 years old, and they are going to have an invite-only meeting in January, uh, and the invitees are global elitists, federal governments, and other fake meat companies. And their goal is to create a product. So they're taking a different way around. They want to partner up with real cattle ranchers and beef producers, and they want to mix real beef into their fake beef, and label it as like, certified Angus because it would have a certain percentage of certified Angus in there. And so it's got all of these crazy ingredients in it. The irony is they have all their hundreds of ingredients in their fake meat, and they're really excited about it because they have gone from producing this alternative meat. You normally take 6 to 8 days. They have now gone down to 4 to 6 days,
What's it
and
made out of? Is it plant-based or
it's no, it's like genetically or meat.
it's
Like
lab meat?
it's lab meat. It's
Okay.
lab meat. And but I think their big deal is they want to redefine beef and meat and production agriculture, and they believe that their idea is going to save the planet. Now, I don't know if there's going to be any beef producers that are willing to get on board, and there might be.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, exactly. But I thought it was very, I don't know, maybe a little bit weird that they the invite only to this summit in January was only going to be held for global elite scientists, uh, federal governments, and then the alternative meat community, but no producers.
Oh,
And
you
so,
mentioned certified Angus beef, and I was kind of like, well, I could see that. So,
right. So they want to take these, like this labeled beef, like certified Angus beef, and they want to put a certain percentage of it onto their fake meat and mix it all up. Now, I don't know how you make a steak like that, Jim. I don't know. Maybe it's all ground beef, but that way they can label it as real beef and get that market share. And they're really excited about it. I'll send you the article, but it's sounds like a step. Well, see, so what concerns me about it is they're taking a different, where the other fake meat companies are saying, okay, they're buying into what Jim Mundorf said. They're buying into the lie that cattle are killing the planet, and they're going this opposite direction of true beef production. This company has come out and stated, hey, we want to get on board and work with the true beef producers across the nation and the world. So I find it very, I don't know, ironic and weird all at the same time that, and I want to watch that. And I want to send Jim Mundorf or Alex Newman or somebody to that invite only summit in January.
how much? What would you bet an NCBA person's been invited? And so, well, no, I bet you North American Meat Institute, who is also a checkoff contractor, who is the biggest um lobbyist for the beef pack. I guess they're partners with NCBA as lobbyists for the beef packers, but they're also lobbyists for the fake meat industry.
Yeah.
Because Tyson Foods and Cargill are both body, and JBS, big time JBS, are all in on this fake meat. And the Defense Department came out and said $500 million, $500 million, they're going to spend on trying to get this lab meat stuff into the military. And so NCBA comes out and said, this is, it was Ethan Lane quoted, this is outrageous. How can we do this stuff? And I'm like, you know exactly how you do it. North American Meat Institute is on Capitol Hill in DC lobbying for this crap. And they are your partners. They are the cattlemen's partners in the beef checkoff. We are giving them money.
Yeah.
Straight out of our checks from the sale barn, some of that money goes to the North American Meat Institute. And and that goes straight back to everything we've always talked about, all this stuff. But, and so, yeah. And as far as this fake meat goes, the thing about, it causes a lot of people to be worried. It was the main thing I started writing about with Lonesome Lands when I very first started. And I think I'm coming up on 7 years. I've been doing this. But so it's probably 6 years ago that I wrote this. And of course they said, we're going to have this stuff on the shelves and in restaurants by the end of the year. I mean, and it just never happens. It just seems like a Ponzi scheme almost at this point. I mean, I think they are still definitely developing it. JBS is building a big thing in Brazil, a big laboratory where they're going to grow this crap or whatever. But it just never really seems to happen.
Because these people want beef. I mean, they realize that
And they don't want it from crooks.
no,
And
they don't.
and people are realizing that's the other thing. People
I
are really realizing they cannot trust what is in
That's
the
it
grocery
right there.
store.
It's not about the crooks. It's about they don't know what they're getting.
And
That's
so
what it
that goes back to this Meatable thing. Like this seems like the worst. If you look at like where sentiment is going, you look at these Casey and Callie Means that are doing every podcast out there. They're testifying in the front of the Senate along with a number of other people. All these people are talking about all these horrible ingredients in our food. And then and this company comes out and like, hey, we got a great idea. We're going to have
yeah.
all these ingredients that nobody recognizes and we're going to
We're
put it in
gonna
beef.
mix it with beef.
Yeah. Like it sounds like the worst business idea ever. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I guess that's where I'm at on that.
It's a crazy world, my friend. It's a crazy world.
All right. Anything else?
I'm just praying for the people in the South, and I'm praying for the people in Florida, and I'm hoping that hurricane. My whole dream would be that God would show his presence and say, calm the storm over the sea and not hurt anybody and take all these homes, and hey, listen, there's real producers down there.
Yeah,
And
Florida's top
yeah,
three beef producing
yep,
state.
it sure is.
At one time, I think they were number one.
It sure is. And there's a lot of cattle on a very small amount of acreage down there. And those people are good producers. I'll give you a piece of history. So the first cattle trails were to the east. They weren't to the north and the west. They were to the east. And those cattle that they trailed east, the Spanish trailed those cattle east, and they mixed in with those Bos Taurus and Bos Indicus animals that we brought over from the New World, and then the Spanish cattle came up, and all of these cattle mixed up, and that's what created what we have in Florida today. And so the beef production history in Florida is perhaps the very foundation of the beef production history in the United States. And there are a lot of cattle produced in Florida. A lot of those cattle come up here to Texas and then on up into the northern markets. And so I wish those guys very good luck, because I've never been through a hurricane. I've been through a couple 5-minute tornadoes and some 3-day blizzards, and those are bad enough. But the water, a 15-foot storm surge, I don't know how far inland that goes. If the land's flat, a long way. And it kind of scares me. So I'm wishing those guys the best of luck. We're praying for them.
Yeah. You think the government's making it happen?
Dude, I'm going to tell you
I'm
something.
seeing that. So I feel like when you said
All
that, I
over.
hadn't seen that hardly at all. Now it's like I'm
Now it's
constantly.
everywhere. And so, and
Corbin
so,
talked about it today on
yeah.
Feeder Flash.
And so the other day, right after our Lonesome report, Jack Payne, he texts me and he goes, Jim's wrong. They are doing that. And so ever since then, every little thing I get across, I send to Jack, and I say, send it to Jim.
Yeah, there's a meteorologist kid, and he's like 21. He's like, there are weather. There is technology that tries to produce weather, but there's nothing that can produce things like Helene or Milton. But I'm like,
I don't think we can
I'm
control
not
where.
completely, I'm not saying, but I don't think it's like, I think what Corbett said this morning, he's like, well, I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if they could
Well,
do it. They definitely do it. But I
listen,
don't
I
know
don't
what the
think
point
they
of
can
doing these things.
guide. I don't think they can guide a storm in its path, but I know for a fact that they can throw some dry ice out there and the flood rains come. I mean, I witnessed it back in 2011 right here in North Texas. They did it, and at 8 o'clock in the morning, and then over a little town, and by 1 o'clock that afternoon, that little old town was about washed away. And I mean, I know that
Yeah.
listen, that
Okay,
technology.
now we got to get into this. What did you witness? Because I feel like now, you know what I thought after that one podcast? I was like, okay, I didn't want to get into like Shad. Let's not get down into these conspiracy theories. And then I go, did you know we never landed on the moon? It's
I've never had a chicken nugget.
You've never had a chicken nugget?